Derek Carr is now officially a free agent, but is he the best option for the New Orleans Saints? We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much as always. Make it Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget we're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert, credential member of the media, CrescentCitySports.com, USA Today's Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at Ultimate Football GM. Have you ever dreamed of being an NFL general manager or running your own football franchise? Well, this game gives you the opportunity to do that. You can download it on your mobile device by heading over to ultimate-gm.com or look it up in your app stores. And our listeners are going to get a 100% free boost to their franchise when you use the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. I'll tell you more about that later, but on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going to take a look at the Pitt defensive tackle, Calijah Kancey, who might just be too good to pass up despite his size. I'll tell you why that might not matter. We'll also take a look at ranking the competition for the New Orleans Saints within the NFL when it comes to Derek Carr. But first, he's officially now a free agent. We've been tracking the Derek Carr situation on a daily basis here on the show, and now we finally moved into sort of the next step of what I'm calling the Derek Carr Chronicles. I don't feel like calling it a sweepstakes. I don't feel like calling it a race. It's just Chronicles, right? We're following along with it. And now we've entered the situation to where the New Orleans Saints now have their ability to be able to go out and take a crack at Derek Carr in free agency. And if we're being honest, they should be all in on trying to land him. Is Derek Carr going to win the New Orleans Saints a Super Bowl? Maybe, but is he a Super Bowl winning quarterback? No. Is Derek Carr a playoff winning quarterback? Actually, no. He's 0-1 in the NFL playoffs. Is Derek Carr somebody that's worth breaking the bank over or going broke over? Also, no. But is Derek Carr now the best quarterback option available in the open market? Absolutely, yes. Is he better than what the New Orleans Saints have in-house? I guess that depends on how you feel about the future of Jameis Winston. But if Jameis Winston's not back, and some folks might even say Derek Carr, even if Jameis Winston does come back, is still a better option. I don't necessarily agree with that, but based upon what we've seen as of late, one has been able to start games, the other one hasn't. Is Derek Carr going to be too expensive? Is he worth the investment, even at a reasonable price? Well, that's not our question to answer. That is the question for Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael to answer, because it's up to them to make sure he is worth the investment by putting him in position to be successful if the New Orleans Saints were to sign him. That is their responsibility to get done. I've had some folks that have, written in and kind of shared their opinions on whether or not Derek Carr is the right choice, isn't the right choice. But the one thing that everybody can sort of agree with here is that based upon the market, he's probably the best option available from outside of the organization. And if you don't have faith that the New Orleans Saints coaching staff is going to be able to put a 9-year NFL veteran that you build an offense for over the offseason in position to win, then you probably don't have confidence they're going to be able to do that with anyone. So why wait around for a rookie? Why wait around for 2024? If you want to compete in what is going to be a very bad division in 2023, you got to have a quarterback that's going to help you be able to do that. And Derek Carr does make this New Orleans Saints team competitive within their division. Now, Carr immediately becomes a tier 2 available quarterback if guys like Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson and Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers become available, or if like Tom Brady comes back out of retirement again, I guess. But if the Ravens decide that they're going to tag and trade Lamar Jackson, then he's tier 1. If Aaron Rodgers comes out of his darkness retreat ready to move on and transcend the Green Bay Packers, then he becomes a tier 1 guy, immediately making Derek Carr a tier 2 option. But as of right now, those two quarterbacks are not available. I point that out, though, because if you look at the tier below Derek Carr of the quarterbacks that are available, which include but are not limited to options like Jimmy Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Ryan Tannehill, if he ends up being traded, then that would immediately take that tier that's below Derek Carr and make them tier 3 in terms of the available free agent quarterbacks or available on the market quarterbacks that are out there if Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers become available. Who's below that group? Well, then you're going to guys like Teddy Bridgewater and Jacoby Brissett. And in that case, you might as well just call up Jameis Winston and see if you can convince him to stick around for another year, or bring back Andy Dalton, or just throw it all to the wind and start Taysom Hill in 2023, which would require Dennis Allen to do a little bit of backtracking. He said Taysom Hill would no longer be a part of the quarterback conversation, but he spent a lot of time playing quarterback in 2022. So in 2023, if you're at a point to where you miss on that free agent, you miss on this free agent, and you're already down to the 4th tier of guys, you might as well just start one of the guys you're already familiar with and just build the offense around them in the offseason. The key, though, is that anything less than Derek Carr, and honestly, anything Derek Carr or less, you're probably still looking at potentially drafting a quarterback in this year's NFL draft, whether that be at the bottom of the 1st round or at the top of the 2nd round, depending upon how you feel about a Hendon Hooker, who of course is my preference in that range. But lots of folks see Tanner McKee, the Stanford quarterback, in that area. I think that there are some that kind of like overinflate a couple of those like day 3, late day 2 guys that are out there, but we'll see how their stock changes moving forward. It is only February after all. And so when you look at kind of the tiers that the Saints have available, yeah, Derek Carr is probably your best option. And in any case, you're still looking at grabbing a young quarterback in the draft if you can. You look at Cam Jordan, he's out here campaigning for Derek Carr. There's a clear disconnect on the public versus the player and how they view Derek Carr, which should tell you something. And then the other piece is that even Cam Jordan saying, hey, bring in a great, vet, i.e. Derek Carr, draft Hendon Hooker, and bring back David Onyemata, let's roll. Like, that's what he's absolutely ready for. So unless you're looking at any of these other in-house options, yeah, Derek Carr is going to be the best you're going to be able to find. So the bottom line is that while Derek Carr is the team's best option, anything after that, you might as well saddle up with a familiar face and head to the draft to see if you can find somebody at the bottom of round 1 or top of round 2 to get you ready. But as of right now, Derek Carr is the best that's going to be available. And you're going to see that because Derek Carr, despite what some people think, will have a market. Let's break down the market that's going to be out there for Derek Carr and where they rank in terms of level of competition for the New Orleans Saints. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. And today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at Ultimate Pro Football GM. This is my favorite mobile game that's out there. And especially right now, like as we're discussing potentially trading for players, potentially signing players, if you're done with the potentially part of that conversation and you want to do it all yourself and follow along with the offseason, you can do that time and time again with Ultimate Pro Football GM. I've been playing this game for months and it has never gotten old. You can play it anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're on a plane, if you're on the subway, it's completely offline. So you're able to play it as you desire and no timeouts and things like that in terms of being able to do an action and having to wait 4 hours where you can do it again. You can play this game as much, as frequently, as often as you want. And that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. And Locked On Saints listeners are going to get a 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's promo code Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the App Store. Once again, that's ultimate-gm.com or in your App Store, Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Who are the biggest competitors for Derek Carr in the or around the NFL when it comes to the New Orleans Saints? That's what we're breaking down as we continue on with our episode. Thanks as always. Making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Let's take a look at where we started off yesterday. The big competition comes from the New York Jets. They started Zach Wilson. They started Mike White. They started Joe Flacco. They have no real clear direction in terms of where they're headed when it comes to quarterback in 2023. So what's the biggest draw when it comes to the New York Jets? Well, they got a ton of money They're only $264,000 under the salary cap, which means that they have pretty much as they need in terms of restructurability, places where they can alleviate, so you'll relieve themselves of some calories, some salary caps, some expenditures, things like that. They're totally fine in that realm. So they would absolutely be able to give Derek Carr the contract that he wants. They have a clear path to a starting quarterback, and they have his former quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator, Todd Downing, now as their passing game coordinator. If you look closely at the New York Jets staff, they're uniquely positioned to be able to go after three key, potential at least three, open market players. Jimmy Garoppolo with the connection between he and Robert Saleh from back in the San Francisco 49ers days. Derek Carr with his connection with Todd Downing in the then Oakland Raiders days. And they also have Nathaniel Hackett as their offensive coordinator, who of course has his connection to the Green Bay Packers and thus Aaron Rodgers should he become available. And that Aaron Rodgers tip is exactly what the biggest roadblock is for the New York Jets. If the Jets want to wait around to see what happens after Aaron Rodgers' dark retreat, whatever it is that he's doing at the moment, then that could potentially stand in their way of being able to land Derek Carr, depending upon how quickly Derek Carr wants to sign a contract. Remember, he was waived by or not even waived actually, because now the new waiver period starts. So because of that, because he has more than 4 years experience, he goes directly to the open market. You can sign him. It doesn't bite into your compensatory pick formula. It doesn't do anything for them on a compensatory pick side in Las Vegas. So at this point, it's a clean cut. So if Derek Carr is looking to sign quickly, New York Jets might not be positioned to be able to act so quickly, but they certainly have all of the other pieces, including some really good offensive pieces in wide receiver Garrett Wilson, Offensive Rookie of the Year, as well as, of course, Breece Hall, who was in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year before he was injured. Next up, I'll put the Carolina Panthers at number 2, although something to consider with the Carolina Panthers is that they do pick early enough in the first round to go out there and find a rookie quarterback, which could be a bit of a turnoff for Derek Carr. Does he really want to be in a place where an immediate potential replacement is breathing down his neck right away? He just got away from that situation in Las Vegas. They chose Jarrett Stidham over him for the last 2 weeks, signaling that they were going to be heading somewhere else. You really want to be in that situation again? In 2022, the Carolina Panthers started at the beginning of the year Baker Mayfield. He, of course, ended up signing with the Los Angeles Rams, as a free agent. So they also started PJ Walker and Sam Darnold. They've also got third-round pick Matt Corral on the roster as well. But when you invest a third-round pick in a quarterback, if that quarterback never sees the light of day, it's not that huge of a loss. Minus $7 million over, or let me say it this way, $7 million over the salary cap. Not a bad situation for them to be. So their biggest draw is effectively like they're going to have the money in terms of being able to do it. They have a clear path to the starting job right now. And, there's enough money to be thrown around in that situation. But the biggest roadblock, of course, is are they okay with restructuring everything and starting a situation like the New Orleans Saints of kicking the can down the road a little bit? They can make the money, but do they want to? And then the other piece of it, of course, is that they're in position to grab a young quarterback that could potentially keep Derek Carr out of Carolina. At number 3, I've got another NFC South team, the Atlanta Falcons. They're very likely to be completely focused in all right now on Lamar Jackson to see what happens there. But hey, in 2022, they started Marcus Mariota. They started their third-round rookie for the last 4 games of the season in Desmond Ridder. But again, he's a third-round pick. So if he never sees the light of day again, it's not a huge investment loss. You trade him, you recoup some of the draft capital. They've also got $56.6 million of spending money. So you want to know what it is that's their biggest draw? The moolah. That's really, really, really easy. The big roadblock for them, though, is do they worry about diminishing Desmond Ridder in that way, right? In terms of potentially stifling his development, all those other pieces. We'll go to our next one here, the Tennessee Titans. This one's a really interesting one, but this is where I start to trail off on some of the potential players that are available. Sorry. One of the other big draws, of course, for the Carolina Panthers is how magnificent the staff is that they've put together over there. But are they putting together that staff that has Josh McCown, that has Frank Reich, that has Jim Caldwell, that feels very much like a developmental staff for a young quarterback? So again, where does that factor in? Then you've got teams like the Tennessee Titans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Washington Commanders, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Houston Texans that can get involved as well. I would probably put the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans all the way to the side. They have early draft picks, and then they also have connections to Derek Carr in a way that's actually not positive. So it's not the Todd Downing situation. Instead, you look at the Colts, one of the biggest roadblocks that they actually have is that they just brought in Shane Steichen as their new head coach, the former offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. Seems like a dual threat quarterback makes a lot more sense there, which they're going to be able to find in the draft because they have a very early draft pick, number 4 in this coming NFL draft. As for the Houston Texans, one of their staff members is the younger brother of Josh McDaniels. So perhaps the way that things ended in Las Vegas could affect the possibility of them even getting started in Houston. So those are a couple of ones that I might start to rule out. I might be in that same sort of positioning when it comes to the Tennessee Titans as well. Tim Kelly, who they just promoted to their offensive coordinator, he's a part of the Belichick tree, which is the exact same place that Josh McDaniels came from, and so he knows that system doesn't necessarily work great for him. So maybe that's something that he stays away from. But one other team has a connection to him. That's the Washington Commanders. Jack Del Rio, who's their defensive coordinator, was the Oakland Raiders head coach in 2015, 16, and 17, 3 Pro Bowl years for Derek Carr, but they have no offensive coordinator, much like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have no offensive staff. So how do you pitch a future and a vision to Derek Carr without knowing what direction your offense is even going to go? So that makes that sort of group of teams down at the bottom a little bit more removed from me than the guys at the top, the teams at the top, like the New York Jets, the Carolina Panthers, and the Atlanta Falcons. So we'll see exactly like how much those teams actually challenge the New Orleans Saints in this. I'm starting to feel a little bit better after breaking it down and sort of finding like where are the connections and things like that. Feeling a little bit better about the Saints' chances than I originally did when he hit the open market. But money is going to be the big question. How much are the New Orleans Saints willing to invest? Are they willing to invest more than $35 million per year? Because if not, someone might be. And if not, and if the market isn't, then that's great news for the New Orleans Saints. Fantastic news for the New Orleans Saints if they are indeed still interested in Derek Carr. One like very dark horse that I'll throw out there before we move on to Calijah Kancey, who I'm very excited to speak on, is the Green Bay Packers. If Aaron Rodgers ends up getting traded away and the Green Bay Packers decide that they're not really comfortable moving forward with Jordan Love, which we've never really heard a full commitment to Jordan Love post Aaron Rodgers, which honestly is just like good football management. You don't want to do that and then potentially go in a different direction, ruin that relationship, burn those bridges, all that stuff. I get it. But if they end up in that, then there's a potential that they could potentially get into on the Derek Carr sort of situation too. But the kind of depends on how much salary they're able to move around if they move off of Aaron Rodgers. So that could get in the way a little bit. All right, coming up next, Calijah Kancey, the Pitt defensive tackle, big time need for the New Orleans Saints in that area. Yeah, he wouldn't fix everything, but he sure would fix a lot. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in America. It is the midway point of the NBA season, it's almost here at least, and now is the perfect time for you to download the FanDuel mobile app because new customers are going to be able to get their no sweat first bet of $1,000. That's a bonus bet that gives you back your money if your first bet doesn't win. So there's no losing with FanDuel. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to threes drained. Right now, you can look at the NBA action on Wednesday night, -6.5 right now for the Charlotte Hornets up against the San Antonio Spurs. Seems like a pretty good one there. Spurs, not great. You can look at the Miami Heat in a tight one up against the Brooklyn Nets and so many others. Those are just the point spreads. There's also more and more that you can get in, including star player props like, let's see if I can find a good one here. Devin Booker's points scored. You think they're going to come in at over or under 25.5 points in his next matchup? Those are the kinds of things you're going to be able to find over on FanDuel every single day. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine some of those bets so that you get a better chance or a bigger chance at a better payout as well with same game parlays. So don't miss out on your chance for your no sweat first bet of $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with a quick look at one of my favorite NFL draft prospects in this year's draft class. It is Pittsburgh defensive tackle Calijah Kancey. And let me be more specific. He is my favorite interior pass rusher in this year's NFL draft. Now, I don't want to discredit Michigan defensive tackle Mazi Smith. So when I look at like these interior defenders that are phenomenal pass rushers, that's a big time need for the New Orleans Saints going into 2023. Now, there's a couple of things to note when it comes to Calijah Kancey. He's not just somebody that makes an impact in the pass rush, which he does. 7 sacks in 2021, 7.5 in 2022. He also had 13 tackles for a loss in 2021, 14.5 in 2022. I'm so sorry. My numbers are getting all messed up today. But so he makes an impact in the run game as well. He is a penetrator. He is someone that is disruptive as all get out when it comes to that interior defense. And look, he's not going to be a guy that you want to line up over center and say, okay, go and take up 2 blockers, or line up over center and say, okay, push the pile so that you can stop this QB sneak. He's not that guy. But he is a guy if you want to get pressure on your quarterback and if you want to start collapsing pockets, because the Saints have had some trouble with the interior over the course of the past couple of years, going back to the pass rush on the interior in 2021 and then the run game on the interior in 2022. Don't forget, with the exception of Kentavious Street, David Onyemata, Shai Tuttle, Malcolm Roach, anybody that took interior defensive snaps as a defensive tackle for the New Orleans Saints had an average depth of tackle of more than 3 yards or 3 yards or more, which means they were making stops in the run game 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. So they were either getting pushed off the line of scrimmage, which happened a ton last year, or they just weren't able to make those plays. They were getting moved and then ended up having to make the play from the backside. And that's not great, Bob. Like, that's not necessarily what you want when you're talking about the interior defensive line. So when I focus on Calijah Kancey and I think about him as an interior pass rusher that could be incredibly disruptive, that you can utilize as a natural pass rusher from the inside, and also allows you to kind of have a natural NASCAR package on the field for passing downs without you having to do anything that is, big time rotation or anything like that. But you can allow Kancey to still be a part of the rotation, maybe on a big time rundown. You've got David Onyemata, if you can re-sign him and you go out there and you get like an A'Shawn Robinson, for instance, who can be a people mover for you. Sure, absolutely. Calijah Kancey will not answer every single question. He can't play quarterback. He can't play running back. He's not going to block for you in the offensive line. That's not what you do. You draft people to serve a role. And Calijah Kancey out of Pittsburgh, his role is that of slapping the heck out of every quarterback that he can. That's what he does. And that's what the New Orleans Saints need. They need somebody that's going to be able to put pressure on the interior right in the face of a quarterback. I love Siaki Ika for the same reason coming out of Baylor, right? But the thing that you want, the thing that people will always remind me of when it comes to Kancey is that he measures in at about like 6 foot, 280 pounds. Let's just make things clear here. The Saints don't have a clearly defined prototype at defensive tackle like they used to have at wide receiver, or like they have had in the past at defensive back, particularly cornerback, right? Or even linebacker, which they also broke last year, that prototype, when they drafted DeMarco Jackson. Why? Because they chose leadership abilities, team captain, team this, that, and the other. Those are the things that they ended up putting over just size and speed. DeMarco Jackson, far smaller than just about any linebacker that the Saints have drafted over the course of the past couple of years. Pete Werner's in the range, but you think about guys like Stephon Anthony, you think about the free agency investment, you think about Caden Ellis, you think about the free agency investment in Demario Davis, like that has been their prototype. DeMarco Jackson's not those guys, but he's incredibly athletic, very, very high IQ on the field, and has leadership skills. You're looking for that at the defensive tackle spot, Calijah Kancey can be that guy. And just to give you an example here, you think about Shai Tuttle, who came in on the defensive interior as a undrafted free agent, 6'3", 300 pounds. Malcolm Roach, about 6'4", 6'3", 280 or 290 pounds. You think about Jordan Jackson, the other Jackson brother, who's now in Denver with Sean Payton, ironically enough, 285 pounds, while standing a little bit taller, but still 285 pounds. You think back to Sheldon Rankin, 6'1", even though he was over 300 pounds or just under 300 pounds. I think he weighed in at like 299 at the combine or whatever. David Onyemata, over 300 pounds, over 6 foot. So there's not really a full on, you think about Malcolm Brown, who they went and got. He was 6'2", I remember correctly, maybe a little bit bigger, but 330 pounds. So like the prototype matches the description of what the player's role is, not just their position designation. It's not that simple, right? So when you want somebody that's going to be able to come in and be a big time pass rusher on the interior, you're probably looking at somebody like Calijah Kancey in terms of their build. And let's not pretend like, and I can say this about some of the quarterbacks that I criticized yesterday. It's one of the reasons why I said the current draft profile for all of these players can change depending upon what questions they have and the answers they're able to provide. I went hard on a couple of the quarterbacks out there, even though I forgot to mention Stetson Bailey, who at least at this time is an undrafted free agent to me. Yeah, he won 2 national championships. I get it. But if you're if you're a 2-time national championship winner and you're not being spoken about as a first round pick, you're an undrafted free agent. There's no in between for a guy like that. So then you look at like some of these other guys who come in low in terms of weight. What do you say? They can bulk up. So I'm not going to treat Calijah Kancey. I'm going to treat him with the same respect and say he's got to be able to answer that question, but he's not a finished product. He's not a finished product at all. He's 22 years old, probably something like that. And so for that being the case, if you're worried about him being 280 pounds, what if he's 290? Does that make it all better? Because that's all it takes is 10 pounds, right? So these are the things that I look at when it comes to Calijah Kancey and say, yeah, okay, you can ask that question about his size, but let's not pretend like he can't do what Carl Granderson did. Let's not pretend that he can't do what Marcus Davenport did. Both of those guys put on weight, they got bigger, and they were able to step into larger roles. Now, Carl Granderson did it more successfully than Marcus Davenport in 2023. Absolutely, no doubt about that. But it just goes to show. Get them in the building, see what they're able to develop into. And Calijah Kancey could be one of those guys that's just too good to pass up on. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, it is Thursday, and usually Thursdays are all about draft prospects here on Locked On Saints. So we're going to take a deeper dive into the story around Stetson Bennett. Should he be drafted? Should the New Orleans Saints be interested? As well as a little bit more in-depth conversation for some of those later round quarterbacks. So we'll break all that down. Of course, also keeping you up to date with everything going on with the Derek Carr Chronicles as well. Appreciate you as always making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day. Make sure you go and check out Locked On NFL Draft. You want to get some real good, solid NFL draft talk? Damian Parson, Keith Sanchez, they've got you taken care of. You're not going to find better coverage of the NFL Draft than Locked On NFL Draft. So go and see them after you're all done here. Appreciate you as always making me part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. And as always, if you see me, say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.